All right, so first, a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar, so how we're going to do this is we're going to present and walk through what has happened in Arizona and what is in the process of happening in Florida. And then we will have the opportunity for everyone to ask questions. If you'll just type it in the chat, we will answer that for you. And we will also be sending around a recording of this webinar after it is over. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat as they come up. You don't have to wait until the section of the discussion when we have questions, because we will be able to hold the questions until the very end. All right, so thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. My name is Damaris Allen, and I'm the Executive Director of Families for Strong Public Schools. Sorry, I was about to say what your job was. And tonight we're joined by Sharon from Save Our Schools, right, in Arizona. And so I am going to turn off my camera and we're going to start screen sharing. I don't know if you want to say anything about your organization first.
Sure. I also say that it looks like it's disabled. You can work your magic. People
Okay.
can act. So hi, Kirsch. I'm from work for a grassroots organization that formed years ago to privatization, public education system. We to Florida with feeling bad for. I feel like Arizona are really front how privatization our public school. So I'm really with Damaris and no around in Florida are schools. So opportunity to be, I'll go over some and we've got the chat going. Let's if Meredith.
I am okay. My internet is terrible. You're cutting in and out. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I will let's talk about today impact of Universal and sadly share some in Arizona. And just to give you a little context, we mid-90s, middle of the pack spending. Schools were reasonable at that point. Chart a down where literally we're at the bottom of the barrel until here our did provide, but it brought us up. So we happened in Arizona, and as our privatization came to Arizona in 1988. Tax credit vouchers came, and then 2000 became empowerment. Came first time in Arizona. So we know we want it is what you guys see in Florida.
So I'm not sure. Can you understand me? I'm trying to join on the other on my phone as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So so we also are seeing the same issues here in Florida. We used to be around the middle of the pack. However, what shifted our focus in spending was the recession. We saw a huge divestment in our traditional public schools around the time of the recession, and we had never gained back our pre-recession spending.
We too. Here are just some baseline about Arizona. We're spending. All historic investment brings us to it's actually not quite that, even when you put local and federal dollars. So bring with basically a inflation growth required by law. For time, we've grown little teeny every year. We see in adjacent to Arizona, teachers make cross the state line, and you can make about $10,000 a year than our teachers are paid. Now, New Mexico used this as legislators made some really significant investments in their public schools, and so they did 29th to 28th, both in their school salaries.
So, I'm sharing that you can hear to my phone, and I will be in soon. So we are currently at about and in ending, in spite of what we historic invest, including all 11,500. And I think it's important to since 2000, Florida has declined by 18 adjusted for.
Wow.
And we are, Florida alone, Anna, have divestment in education. No, you can type in the questions. There just isn't it on a webinar.
Okay.
It's question section.
I think that you were working on.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here, it happened in Arizona. Let me back up a little bit. 17 passed a nearly SOS voucher law, empowerment scholarship accounts. Here, this is what brought Arizona into being. People got political after the 2016, and a lot were, especially at Betsy DeVos education, co-founders of each other at the various protests, and we watched the bill work its way through. At the same time, our school not recovered session cuts in 2008. They passed that nobody wanted. The governor had to twist so much and having to put a cap on votes, but Saver deferred that bill to the back, became a proposition, and by a so the citizens of Arizona said, we do not want expansion, and polling in Arizona says people, regardless of political party, want their public schools. So that our legislator had last year and fully bill. They claimed ability, but virtually none. A little bit more about that in a minute. So we have we call it the joint budget, estimated that this program would cost $33 million. Now, this program is truly kids. So even for already private schools, there's no requirement that you've school. Time that they about $33,000 in its first year. Oh, there are private school kids in any family $7,000. And as you see here in 2022, is nearly $10 million budgeted costs. And we're still figure out where that now budget committee is going to grow at 2024. If I can get. Oh, sorry. There.
And for us, we have a dramatic increase same way as areas we don't have universal vouchers, which is why it is not available regardless of income level right now. 75% level with a increase of 20 additional each year. So we do not use all of intended voucher money. So there is a jump 22. Previously attend a public school to being able to get a voucher. And so they and then we saw they also increased the cap and so that it would increase every this year. We are of anyone can receive, right? So the parents make $1 million a year, never sets full absolutely they can qualify is written right now.
Yeah. And don't want to Arizona your floor to do and choose that we have seen with this university in Arizona. It's the ESA voucher program is $619 million for, and that's sole our existing. I noticed that someone in the when passed in Arizona has long had legislature control in the House. We had a number of who really supported and would vote against this. How enough supported private bills passed. So Arizona kind of petri stuff. So in 2000, they of course was with the battle of the dark foundation, Betsy DeVos's American Children in Arizona Institute, the draft legislation voucher program, state and Senate. And so when that became an issue of the separate state, so it came up with the workaround spreading all over the country. That is that the money will go to the parent. So that passed in 2020 and 2011. And that model, they tested and planned it. It was in the Institute for the national organization that pushes privatization. But over the years, alt schools fiasco, about 50 fuel fiasco, when without much thought decided to just out tax credits for fuel vehicles and near the state. And this is a similar thing here with our ES vouchers. Voucher passed in 2022, all of 2022. In Arizona, and the way it's written, we have no accountability or no academic accountability. So there's no testing required, no way of knowing how the students do ESA vouchers. You can use these things. So of course, on expenses like tuition or uniforms, but then a very big category of expenses. And in there, if you can find them online and says it's going to teach, well, lo and behold, then you can spend voucher dollars on a bounce. Someone found a curriculum out and bought a $600 machine with ESA funds, snow cone machines, you name it. All of this stuff is also private lessons. Many schools, of course, have all kinds of things like this offerings for students. And we know, because of very carefully vendors, a lot of the curricula that is covered by ESA vouchers, private schools, that openly discriminate students, most particularly students. So a little transparency, no oversight. We know that when the voucher program went into a 5% of the people for it came from wealthy zip codes in Arizona. And 45% of the large urban and suburban. We know in Arizona, privatization hurts our rural schools. Arizona has just a year we've been focused our rural, but known for years the case in Arizona who actually exercise and I'm putting in choice 10 families. So 20 of the vouchers went to Paradise Valley, which are areas in Arizona. Our voucher plan allows that if you don't use over and they don't ever have state. Study was done, investigative journal Republica that some families have $1,000 accounts and of families have dollars and use it for college education. We're voucher watch to really keep in the and welcome to follow website to information about that. We think that it's really important talking about to make clear that the choice not the parent school who just whether or not vouchers or to them they choose the. We know Arizona, and this is the Arizona private schools, significantly fewer students of color schools do. We all ESAs rarely cover the going to a private school. Low income family up the difference. So 15,000 at the 7,000 Universal Voucher, which is they get for that. You have to come up with the other 8,000, which be out of reach families. Said voucher students are by LGBTQ special eds. Private schools don't have Ps or 5. So like in Florida.
Which is exactly, we have the same, we are facing issues as well. They don't, they serve less, they rarely cover the cost. A lot of families, they can, if they do costs, they don't cover this, right? So students in our church access to things like often have food pantries, all of those exist to choose a private school themselves there. They have all extras they have to.
So one of the wanted in Arizona, some base ability tax for this, and then also these kids are doing. So any school, we know much information about that, studying, about doing. We know in Arizona, we have gone on the offense. Exciting for us because it's for a very, very long time. A Democratic governor not allow any further expansion or our ESA. She has to roll back voucher, which I don't happen, public education. And so we have to try to come up really minimal accountability. So in state testing is students who use ESA would take the standard would be. We also, Senate bills would require more transparency. It's very difficult to know exactly who this is and how it's being spent. We're able to find out that $20 million was going to Scott Valley is digging through zip from where the students were leaving public school. Complicated. So the Department of Education program a little better job track around being spent and who is using it. Another bill would actually pay for appropriate money, not facing fiasco that we're in the middle of. Love to see that would require schools that take ESA vouchers that they clear to the family services will be per. We know that what happened, be like, oh, I want my this private school. Heard of private schools saying, but private schools saying, well, but we can only do this, this, and this for them. Well, I don't want that. I want to go back to the. And so difficult position, again, would like some more transparency. And then that's more require their employee printed and just requirement for that for our kids. So one of these 7 is moving. It made it out ones like.
And so I want the differences in as your bill. We do have unlike it's required to take a test, not the same state testing. So we compare as opposed to apples. So what level of accountability isn't it doesn't an easy environment to decision. So that's really, really and don't know yet if create sufficient as it is moving through the committee. It is questionable. Policy Institute did with the education and a estimate of what this bill will as it is around 4 billion next year. So, a state that has consistently and since 2000, it is concerning to see that we are going to spend 4 billion. I will in wisely.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're willing to spend that money. I just would like ability with that in.
Here, a lot, we're mostly volunteer and really grassroots frustration from parents. Hear that, just spent $500 on it when they have for the printer, their kids, they ran out of paper for that. It's tough. We are really, our state prioritize public really hasn't. So the 90s, it's been so on expansion.
So there was a question about $4 billion. Well, the example of the vast majority of students who will apply for this scholarship, number of students who the percentage of students who typically scholarship or voucher by how much money receiving, how you get that's the explanation. You can do the Florida website and they have the on there. You can also see how much it's going individual district. Really important. We know that finances are a force, and so if it's we expect that we will, as traditional public school districts. Questions, I'm going to read them and then we'll grades, friends, private schools that the students earn because the parents are paying. Since there isn't any oversight, is there a breakdown on grade? Stories for that?
We do not know. In some of our their college can sort of come up with about what these have any actual data on that in Arizona. Some states with vouchers do track, but we do not at all.
Say that the vast portion of our voucher funding currently are not, which is very, very, very concerning. I don't know how much I would from a non-accredited institution.
Well, and now overseeing our ESA voucher, as I said, is through our Department of Education. We have now low requirements for vendors. So if you're a tutor or something like that, had to have some expertise in your field to tutor. And now you just have to have any high school diploma. And if you, and they will issue it if you're an independent tutor or you're not working something like that, that have to do is send them a picture of your high school diploma and they will make you a vendor. No fingerprint clearance, nothing. And it's become a little bit of a cottage industry in Arizona. Question. Did I answer what you
go ahead.
said? See, Marie Claire, Arizona is funneled through school districts, or are they funded separately from the public education system? And is there a deadline? So it actually is both now. So we started with a very, very small ESA program in 2012. It was just for kids with really highly specialized needs, because our public schools serve 95% of the kids in Arizona, including kids with special needs. But there were some kids who needed extra help. And so the program was originally sold to us as just that. And it was like $1 million. And then of course they expanded eligibility every year until it became fully universal. Now, before it was fully universal, the money they call, so the money from the district school, and 90% for that student would follow the student. Who advocate for ESA say, well, this 10%, so why are they complaining? Because the school still has all of its hard costs that they have to pay for. If they lose it, puts them in a very, very difficult position. Now with the universal program, which any time spent in school, it's kind of a question, where does that money come from? Not budget for it. So yeah, there is in a bit of a hole right now because the program and they don't have. And so wow, if this is going to be million, just the universal voucher, 50 million, we could offer full all students in Arizona. Like that's how we could be all kids instead of just, bouncy houses and espresso machines. There's more to this question from Marie Claire. Have you seen issues with kids coming back to public schools midway through the year? So we have, but again, they don't track that. Our Department of Education doesn't track that. We have done FOIA requests asking for that data, but have not gotten that data. But we have heard anecdotally from teachers, because we know thousands of teachers across the state, that does happen. And so public schools accept at any time. We have open enrollment in Arizona, so lots of options for kids in our public system. And so we have heard anecdotally that kids will come back mid highest class sizes in Arizona. And we have the highest student to counselor ratio. The recommendation is 1 to 250 kids. We have 1 to 250 kids. And so, especially in our Title I school, it's very, very difficult when a kid year and is with the other kids are there. To know more about how often, we'll keep sending our FOIA.
Next question is, what is the sentiment with the leaders? When will this be voted on in Florida? So it is moving through committees. The way it works in Florida is there's a bill in the House, there's a bill in the Senate, and both of those bills have 3 committee stops. A little graphic to help you follow that. It has gone through it just passed the first committee in the Senate today. There were lots of questions on that bill, a lot of questions about accountability. How much money should we be spending for students because they don't have the same fixed expenses as those with buildings and things like that. And so it did move favorably through committee, though several people said they wanted to see this bill grow and change as it moved through committees, right? So that's one of the things that we get to do as we're moving. Thursday morning at 9 a.m. in the House, and it will have 1 committee stop after that in the House and 2 committee stops in the Senate. That's actually why we have this graphic up here, is a call to action, is now is our best time to make a change and to make a difference. So we are doing where we're just calling those who are on those committees every Tuesday and Thursday. So as they move through committee, we will be reaching out to those legislators and let them know that we're concerned. Accountability, that we can't, that we can't spend money without accountability. We have to remember the impact on our public schools as it moves forward. So the answer is it'll be voted on multiple times as it goes forward.
Mm-hmm. So there's another question here. It's a good question. Susan says that some parents are under the impression that they pay $8,000 in school taxes per year. So they say they're just recouping money that is their personal taxes. So how would we answer them? Damaris, do you want to do that? Or I have my answer, but. Yeah,
I can answer and then you can answer.
Okay.
They do. parents do not pay in $8,000. They pay in a small portion and the rest of us pay in more, right? Especially in a place like Florida. It is not an enormous amount of money. I think when we looked up what we pay into public schools, and I have a fairly high taxed area as far as property taxes are concerned. I want to say it was under $1,000 for the year. Obviously, that doesn't close to hitting the amount that is years.
To add to that, that part of, our was founded on the idea of educating its citizens, public good. Almost every single state, the state is provide for its citizens. And so, and to our Constitution, uniform. And well, what does that mean if rural and uniform system? Though is the majority of people, we know that public serve so many ways. We do need an course values to have a citizen, and in the school beat of the community. This is areas, it's a rural areas, the community. It's the place breakfast, sometimes breakfast they'll have for providing families that are facing security. It's right, football games, like all of that. Public education do so much more than kids. Heartbeat of their.
Also in Florida, it's important to note that schools are hurricane shelters. Really important that we have those. Sorry, we're going through the questions.
I know you guys have.
You have any messaging tips?
I'm trying to pull up my. So for we and polling continue that really, regardless, people really do for public education schools to be well. And in Arizona, I read kind of trying to be, the vast majority say, yeah, we need to be funding our schools more teachers. So we talk about that there's wide support for education, the importance of public education, like I before, that provide all kinds for kids and communities beyond education that they offer. An educated workforce. And there are many studies that show having a well-educated workforce means that your property values are going to be strong. Your state is going to be fare better. So I think that's important. And so sometimes when somebody who's like, well, I don't have kids in school anymore. And well, but you still go to the grocery store or go to your dentist, live in the people who live there to be educated.
And I would just echo what you said. I think it really is an investment, right? That we're not. It's just important that we invest in our future and in education.
Yeah. And again, I would also point out that with public schools, we have in Arizona, you guys probably do too, we have so much accountability and transparency There are local school boards, locally elected school boards. It's very, you know what's going on there. Parents can have a say in what's going on. The community can have a say. There is just tons of transparency. And so to take all of this money and send it into this private system where we have no idea if it's being well spent or not, just doesn't make sense to me. It's not fiscally responsible.
And I think even another issue is it is hard to be a parent, right? Like there is a lot, it is incredibly hard. And this decision is made even harder because we don't have adequate information. We don't, in Florida, unless you go looking for yourself, you don't know that the school is not accredited, right? So and that can take hours and hours of going through each individual school to figure out whether that is a good fit or not. And so the state really isn't setting us up for success in these programs. While they're saying it's about choice and about the kids, we don't have adequate information. We don't know off the bat how they're testing. Are they being held accountable? Do they have certified teachers? Do they, are there schools, are there students performing well once? All of these things that are readily available to us in our traditional public schools are not readily available to us in our private schools. And that for me makes my job significantly harder as a parent.
And the state is tasked with offering a public education, not a whole nother funds private education. That's completely unaccountable.
And I'm not sure if you saw this one. What happened when your ESAs weren't funded? How did that work moving forward?
Still kind of remains to be seen. They have to come up with $200 million. It's, we do have a surplus, but they did not budget for it. So I don't, they're going to try to budget for it, I think. We're in the middle of our next legislative session. But yeah, I mean, that's why we're calling, because it wasn't, which would have been bad enough. Times much money.
Yeah. So some other in here are really important. We know the families that has the private year, and so students lost access, to find a place. Like I said, is that makes our jobs harder, right? Kids, especially kids who transitions and needs them to go to school one day and close. Problem in Miami-Dade was held hostage because they had an outstanding transportation balance that they couldn't pay, and they wouldn't release their students until they paid the bill. So students just sat out of school for months. And the challenges is there are like that because we have those same safeguards built in as we do with our traditional public schools.
Yeah. I think, again, in practice, people pushing vouchers will say they're for all kids, or when they pushed our Universal Voucher program, they claimed it was for low-income kids. But the fact of the matter is, it's a complicated program. It takes a lot on the parents' end to work through. We use Class Wallet, a third-party vendor. And so in practice, the people who exercise the school choice are comparatively well-off families. So what it becomes is a program that subsidizes wealthy families for their kids' private or homeschool education.
And I think that's really, really important to recognize. I think, so if you look at the private schools in your area, what would a high quality private school that you would think of as a great private school costs. I know that in my area, if I were to send my kids to a comparable private school to their public school, and they would act if I did any AP class, it would cost $55,000, and the 85 income close. Does that mean? Does that really give me a choice? Note that there was an amendment that was filed on HB1 version of this bill that would limit private schools that accept from significantly raised tuition to make them more accessible. So if it's then we have to it has to be accessible. I shouldn't have to take out a loan, go to a middle school, meant that funding.
Yeah. And actually, or college or high school for 18,000. Completely out of reach. Many families subsidy.
Yeah. What is the state? What are your schools now, Arizona?
That's an interesting question. Vast majority of people for the were, as I said before, were already in so they just got a $7,000 subsidy for homeschool education. So seen kids were required to public system, and I think what your question was getting at, our vouchers in Arizona areas, impacts were noticeable on the public. Maybe it was just one or two being a public school. This happens at often because sometimes it's the literally only option they have school, and their kid to a charter private school, they have very, very far. But charter school are different in Arizona to rural areas, skim off students from public school. Seeing public schools and close down tremendously in those communities.
And
Kathleen,
go ahead.
Protesting about loss of ESA. So the governor had just of the universal, we would still have other voucher programs, which includes many special needs, kids from foster kids who either go to DNF or live in an area of school, and then siblings of all those. So that program, about $270 million a year. So I haven't losing their universal voucher. I think they were just happy to subsidy.
So what will the impact be in Florida? That's where I would recommend that. I highly recommend, and I'll send this in, I'll send a follow-up email within the next few days, and I'll link the study with the Florida Policy Institute. I would go in at your district and what you can expect. We do know that underutilized schools cost significantly more per student to there are fixed expenses that go along with school. So I think it's very reasonable to think to foresee that our class sizes will increase. While we do have somewhat limited class sizes, there are lots of there's a big asterisk by that statement. So if your kid's in an AP class, if your kid's in a special, if your kid's like an elective class, those aren't regulated. Also, it is an average over the whole school. So there are smaller classes that can bring them down. So we'll bring that down. So we also staffed because we're not financing it with things like counselors. We run about 1 to 600 ratio, like you, where the industry average or recommendation is 1 to 250. So I think we can add. In addition, the kids often over of kids receiving vouchers public school and they often have greater than that was COVID, and that is really important. So catch up. Their peers are in school, and we don't immediately follow the student. So it follows later. So sometimes we have to educate a student for free because they're staying in or previously in the count. All of those mean that, in my last year, we saw, we need to write what that meant. Was lost orchestra, they lost band, theater, things that which are education and exciting for students and all their learners. And science hand in hand. We will continue um it's speculation, but 4 billion is a lot of money. And point I would add to see us money to every student. So confusing why we have dollars to spend vouchers, yet everyone in the bottom, as opposed to I would just like $15,000 educate our students, go towards the top. Not done any of those in the past years as cheaply as we, but all of a sudden there's 4 to allocate.
Your question, Marie, in Arizona, have there been schools to vilify this is happening, lose the public government school disparaging? And yes, not only is that happening, that message driven by the national private is like the American Federation, the Walton Foundation, the institute, they affect PR messaging to vilify and use the tools disparaging and working its way for legislation. And we have on our website, again, we did a 5 on vouchers in Arizona. Was looking at selling school a little bit to the people who. So in Arizona, it's even the not pushing this. It's the pushing this narrative. Teen elected our state legislature would support universal. They dumped $250,000 into our state that save our and stopped. And so there's a very well coordinated national effort to push these privatization efforts. And the reason I think, like I said, with Arizona, we see a lot of it here because they're able to push anything they've wanted. And you guys in Florida have your own version of that. But as we know, the vast majority of people go to their local want a strong public school. Voucher programs are not accountable. They often hurt more than help them. And so at Save Our Schools, we really prioritizing public. Can add.
If you send it to me, I will in the follow-up can that as well. And to answer the last, excellent question that has not been. So in appropriation, the next committee is the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee. We'll talk a bit more about funding. We will know more on Thursday and how that meeting goes and how the discussion goes about what they expect the impact is. The concern is that we are going to be much like drastically the cost. We saw it up in the House where it'll be a cost. It'll be with the kids where states where this is, it isn't funds leaving with we're already in private. So that's why we are and advocating and educating are on what has happened in other states. Absolutely learn from their lessons. We don't have to experience it here. So it is now. If I will be sent an email follow all the information. You will be able to feel free to reach back out. Not create a slide with our email, but my address DAMAIS@strongfloridaschools.com. Welcome to email me with have. I'd be happy to. But you will be receiving an email within the next couple of days.
And I'll give you that email, but I would like it now. It's just Sharon@Arizona.org.
Thank you so much for attending, sharing us tonight.
Great questions.
Oh, it's been wonderful. So thank you guys. On Thursday, we call into our, and if you want to a quick, you can all strong FL take dash and I will put as well. It has some quick get engaged and get involved. Thank you so much for coming, host and of this and for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. A wonderful night. Bye.